Here, day one of the Microsoft event. We're about to get started on the keynote for the Microsoft Connect 2017. Kind of excited. I actually don't know all the topics they're going to cover, so I'm kind of excited to learn about that. And, you know, we have some interviews lined up. It's kind of strange being here because we're here to do our podcast, and we don't have that many people booked because apparently, as I'm understanding, they don't commit to the last minute. So we have like a list of people that are here, and we just kind of have to grab them and drag them in their booth, which we haven't figured out where our booth is yet. I think we find that out after the keynote. They have some type of podcast booth set up for us, which is pretty cool. So I'm excited about that. And, well, we'll go from here. So the Microsoft Connect 2017 was really interesting. It's not just a big push for Azure. It's also interesting during the entire talk how they didn't really talk much about Microsoft. They didn't talk about operating systems in any measure. Of course, this is a developer-focused conference, but it was really about any platform, anywhere, any language, and all the things you can run on top of Azure. So it was a really cool inside look at some of the new things coming out and some of the things that now are released to general availability. So there was a lot of artificial intelligence and bringing AI everywhere. One of the cool demos they did was identifying apples and pineapples. I really wish they would have just followed the Silicon Valley, not hot dog thing, but, you know, we won't digress. I feel as though it was a little bit of a nod to that. But one of the advantages they showed was the actual ability to do this offline. So you could actually design an app, design a mobile app that does some type of recognition that needs the back end. But then you can also have an option to push that so it has offline availability, so certain functionalities will still work that is based on the Microsoft Cognitive Services and identifying services. This is really interesting use of this. So that was the AI stuff, and of course the phone stuff was outstanding with Xamarin, which is code once, deploy everywhere. If you're not familiar with Xamarin, Microsoft acquired the company, I think it's been a year, maybe 2 years ago, and with it they got Miguel de Icarza, amazing open source developer. And he's now working for Microsoft and developing all this amazing open platform things. I know it's so weird to think that Microsoft's doing open platform stuff, but they are. So that was very cool to watch because they could deploy apps and sync up in real time, develop your app and see how it looks on different phones and on different systems and on different platforms, Android, iOS, and the older models of these phones, which is really cool because now you didn't have to run around loading the app. It had load testing in their system as part of the dev platform when you're using Xamarin. So this is just fascinating stuff to me. It really can bring you from idea to product very, very quickly without a whole lot of testing in between. So some of the other dev highlights were the Visual Studio Code live editing. Now this is really neat because I've been using Google Docs for a long time, and yes, I'm going to bring up Google Docs because it immediately what made me think of here, but this is a really cool use case. So a lot of times you are working on code and you need help with a section of code. The Visual Studio live editing, which is not available yet, but you can sign up for a preview, but they're rolling it out. They didn't give much insight into the back end of the technology behind it, but what they're doing is allowing you to do real-time editing and collaboration with another person at the same time, at the same code, looking at the same things. Now, like I said, I bring this up because Google Docs have been able to do this for a while, and applying this to code makes collaboration very interesting because, you know, a lot of times you have someone look over your shoulder or you share a snippet and you go back and forth in email and you post it to Stack Exchange. Now you can invite someone to, especially if you're collaborating with them on a common project, you can collaborate directly with them in real time and do all the editing work real time. They see what you see, not a screen sharing, but actually editing the code at the same time. And if you've used Google Docs, this feature is not too surprising to you, but it's not been applied that I'm aware of to code in real time. So that's a really cool thing that they looked at. Another announcement was Microsoft joining the MariaDB Foundation as a platinum sponsor. In short, they're throwing money at it. And this is the fork of MySQL. Since MySQL, they were worried, I think, since Sun Oracle got them, that it may not be. So they forked it to MariaDB, which I've been told is a very good system. I don't personally use it. I'm not really a developer. But I love that they're throwing money at the open source. They're not changing anything about it. They're just saying we're going to sponsor it. I know some people think they're going to extinguish open source. They're trying to embrace it, then extinguish it. I'm like, once you put all this under GPL and you're throwing money at developers and just saying, go do what you do. Microsoft is fundamentally shifting how they work as a company, which is why all this is occurring. They're moving towards everything should be on Azure. We can make money on all the hosting of this because you got to run your compute time somewhere. And they really are a tools company is how they think of themselves and are really bringing that to the forefront, because as a tools company, you build all the great tools, people will come use your tools, and of course, if you're the one who made the tools, you're most likely to use Azure to host the back end of this. So it's kind of a complete cycle, and it's the way that they've strategically positioned themselves. Also, we won. Open source won. End of story here. I mean, there's still a ways to go. Microsoft is not a completely open, but it may not make sense for them to open things. I mean, it may make sense to us, people who are advocates of open source software, but, you know, don't ask me if Windows 10 is going to be open source. It's not. Matter of fact, I think we're seeing the sunset of a lot of the desktop operating systems are just going to become less relevant, especially Windows 10. No one's thrilled with it. That's no enthusiasm around that product. It's something that we use out of necessary evils. But as things go to cloud-enabled apps, the operating system becomes less relevant. And I think Microsoft realizes they're going to make money on it until they can't, and their operating system becomes less relevant. It's all going to be about how you host it in the cloud. So it's a strategic position I see very good for them. And them releasing these tools is what will make them survivable as a company. And keeping things open, they realize developers really like open source. Sorry, Microsoft, you were wrong for a long time. Steve Ballmer was right about it being a cancer, because we have watched it destroy the closed source concepts and bring things more open, which, of course, as we bring things more open and share more, we progress humankind further. That's my whole open source philosophy in short. And the last thing I'll talk about is the event grid system. That was the final little piece. That was not part of the keynote directly, but part of something that Corey Sanders demoed. And what the event grid is they've created a series of events, and they plan to create more of them. And they're event-driven instances. So you can create, say, an event grid watch for a tweet. And then you can say, based on that tweet, spin up these functions to deal with what was tweeted. And that's a real basic use of it, but you can see the global implications of this. So I could actually create actionable code snippets based on actions that are being watched in the cloud. And because you're using the back end of a large data center, you don't have to be constantly trying to, stream an entire Twitter feed or any other social media this might apply to. And right now, Twitter is the one big one that they have it applied because of the structured data of Twitter. It's easy. And you can tweet something, they can then spin up an instance, and you only have to pay for it, because this is obviously considered when you're running things in the cloud as your compute time costs. It can then trigger the instance, so the actionable item can be done. This was just really neat to see and conceptually realize that, wow, we could actually do this. So let's say we have other triggers, that other events that occur, and with these events that occur, you have an action item that gets kicked off. Let's say weather announcements, you want to do this, or you see something coming and you wanted to do that. We kind of joked it's like the if this, then that at the data center level. So it's a really big thing. We covered some of this in detail on the SMLR podcast, because I did an interview with both Corey Sanders and John Gossman, and we talk a little bit about the event grid. That is an episode available. I'll link it below in the notes here. And, we get a little bit more in depth on some of the things they're offering there. But that's a quick summary of the Microsoft Connect 2017 highlights, announcements. Bringing AI everywhere is part of their announcement title they have for this. And it's, like I said, really interesting. You can watch the entire keynote. I'll leave a link to that as well. And if you like the content here, like and subscribe. That's my quick little summary of some of the highlights I've seen at the Microsoft Connect 2017 event.